Welcome to Spicer & Company. I'm Sean Spicer. Happy Ash Wednesday.
And I'm Lindsay Keith. Well, Sean, as you know, when we were mapping out this show earlier today, we were planning on breaking down President Biden's town hall from last night on CNN. And we will get to that a little bit later in the show. We have a lot to say about it. But with the tragic passing of the great conservative talk show host, Rush Limbaugh, we did want to shift our plans a bit and focus on remembering his life and what it meant to the conservative movement and the legacy that he leaves behind. You know, Sean, we've talked about this. He was the radio pioneer, and he leaves a lasting impression on the Republican Party. And today he lost his battle with stage 4 lung cancer at just the age of 70 years old. And we'll talk about his life in the next few moments. But as we do, our hearts and our prayers go out to his wife, Catherine, and his brother, David, and all of his friends and his family.
Yeah, it was just about a year ago that we saw Rush get the Medal of Freedom. You can see the pictures there, the former First Lady actually presenting him the medal at the State of the Union.
Yeah, and President Trump was a great friend of him and released a statement earlier today saying this in part: "The great Rush Limbaugh has passed away to a better place, free from physical pain and hostility. His honor, courage, strength, and loyalty will never be replaced. Rush was a patriot, a defender of liberty, and someone who believed in all of the greatness our country stands for. Rush was a friend to myself and millions of Americans, a guiding light with the ability to see the truth and paint vivid pictures over the airwaves." Melania and I express our deepest condolences to his wonderful wife, Catherine, his family, and all of his dedicated fans. He will be missed greatly. End of the president's quote there. You know, Sean, we've been talking about him a lot today behind the scenes, but I know that you knew him personally very well. How did you first meet him?
You know, like a lot of folks, I had interacted with him and his producers when I was at the RNC. I went down to Florida and met with him. I was with Chairman Reince, previously the RNC, the first time I met him in person. And it's an amazing experience to meet somebody that you hear, you know, I can't say I listened every day, but over the course of several years, and you meet them in person. And it was interesting. He's a very bombastic radio host, and he in person is quite different. You can see from some of the photos, like he's wearing shorts and a golf shirt, and he was always casually dressed and relaxed, and it was just a fascinating experience to see the man behind the microphone.
Yeah, you know, I know a lot of people can see that he has a cochlear implant, but I think people didn't realize, or a lot of people may not have realized, that he couldn't hear well.
It's interesting you bring that up. The first time I met him, right, we go into his office. He's sort of like a den almost off of where his studio is. And we're sitting and meeting him, and they said, just make sure you're looking right at him because he reads lips. And it hadn't dawned on me, this guy who talks for hours on the radio, who takes callers' questions, who is interacting with people all the time, can barely hear. I mean, this wasn't like a hearing loss. I mean, he literally, if you're not facing him, talking to him so you can see your lips, he doesn't understand you. And it was just amazing to realize what he overcame every day just to do what he did.
Yeah, and some people say that he was the voice for people who didn't have a voice, and to know the story about how he couldn't hear well is so powerful. I know that he endorsed your last book. Yeah. How did that happen?
I mean, I got to know him. I mean, it was amazing. And he had been diagnosed with cancer. And I thought, I don't know. I thought, okay, they always tell you when you're publishing a book, get some high-profile people to read the manuscript and see if they'll endorse it. And I emailed him and I said, hey, Rush, I know you're going through everything. I don't want to be a distraction. He was like, of course I'll do that. It was just that level of generosity that he did. And he did it not just for me, but so many, I don't know, hundreds, thousands of people, that he gave huge amounts of money to places like Tunnels for Towers, other conservative causes, but always without anyone knowing. John Rich, the country music star who's been on the show before, tweeted out today that when he was on The Apprentice, his charity was St. Jude's. And Rush gave an extra $100,000 under the condition that he couldn't tell anyone that he had done it. Rush wanted to help people, and whether it was personally or through a major cause, veterans organizations and others, but never with the fanfare. It wasn't about him. He understood how much he had accomplished and wanted others to share in his prowess and his treasure. It was just, and even on a personal level, you went down and you visited him, and he was a big fan of Apple products. It was, he was enamored, and he'd always look at you and be like, "Oh, you need a new Apple Watch?" And it wasn't a joke. I mean, he would go into his closet and pull something out and be like, "Here you go," and you're thinking, I can't accept this.
He just let you pick whatever you wanted.
Or he'd suggest what he thought you needed. But it was, literally the watch that I wear every day is a gift from Rush Limbaugh.
Wow.
But it was that's who he was behind the scenes. Kind, generous, always thinking of other people. And that's the Rush that I don't think a ton of people, unfortunately, will get to know. But, I mean, to your point earlier, Lindsay, he gave voice to so many conservatives today, not just the ones that are on talk radio. We can talk about that, later in the show. But there are people that listen to that show every day that understood how to craft an effective conservative message. He broke things down in a way that middle-class conservatives, Trump Republicans, I think in large part are who they are because Rush taught us how to speak, how to communicate conservative principles. The idea of pushing back on the media, he called it the drive-by media, the lame street media. But he called out their hypocrisy before anybody did. He was a pioneer, not just on the radio, but in messaging, in bringing voice and life to conservative policies and issues that resonated with middle-class people in a way that they didn't before. And he contrasted that with other policies, left-wing, crazy progressive policies, in a way that when you went out with a bunch of friends, somebody brought something up, you could effectively make an argument based on what you had heard on Rush's show.
You speak about policy. I know that he was very instrumental in the 1994 elections. He was actually named the honorary member of the Republican Conference in 1994 because he helped so much. Talk about how important that was and how rare that was to be named an honorary member.
Yeah, I was on a race in Connecticut. We were one of the top races in the country. But that was what you did. You drove around. You listened to Rush. He talked about the ideas. And Newt Gingrich had rolled out the Contract with America. And Rush gave voice to it. And he talked about what it meant and how we could articulate it. And I think in large part, and that's what Speaker Gingrich recognized, was that Rush Limbaugh and his voice allowed that to happen. We had been in the wilderness for 40 years, but Rush made people believe we could win, and we could win by communicating ideas in a very, very, common sense way that your neighbor, your relatives could understand.
What do you hope that people know about him that they may not have known? I know you tell some of these amazing stories, but what's one of the major things that you hope that is his legacy?
Well, I mentioned the generosity, and it's just a reminder of that. I think the other thing that is the resilience. He's been knocked down. He was fired. He was canceled. And he got back up. In almost every case, he grew bigger and stronger. And he's a reminder to folks that don't take no for an answer. Get up, fight back. That focus on what you do it well. It was interesting. I was at Mass today. It's Ash Wednesday, as we mentioned. And literally as I got into the parking lot, I was a good Catholic. I kept my phone off. But as I got out, I got a text right off the bat. It says, Rush has passed away. And I couldn't help but thinking that as the priest puts the ashes on your forehead, they say, remember, you are dust, and to dust you shall return. And it was a pretty heavy reminder of how precious life was. But it also reminded me of something that Rush had said recently. He said, I have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. It is of immense value, strength, confidence. That's why I am able to remain fully committed to that idea that is what's supposed to happen, will happen when it is meant to. It was clearly his little way of saying, I'm at peace with this. I have a relationship with Jesus Christ. And at the end of the day, we all must remember that we are dust and we will return. So get good with God. And it was just a reminder of your priorities in life on a day that is so holy.
Yeah, that's such a powerful message, and he lived that out. Thanks for sharing so much and all these wonderful stories about him, and I know we're going to talk a little bit more about him as well.
Yeah, we're going to continue to remember Rush's life and, frankly, the impact that he had on the conservative movement with the editor of Talkers Magazine, the magazine of the talk radio industry. That's just ahead. Stay with us.